Okay, yet another question. Some religions posit that as punishment for bad karma, one can return as a vegetable, an animal, or a mineral, in mineral form. However, when you say that even if this were the case, the real you can gain uh, a new position in the real universes at any time and become free. So my question is, will all the plants, animals, and minerals be doing this anytime soon? And what will become of the delicate balance of physical nature?
Well, the first part of your question, it's fun, Charles. So in other words, if the individual's really set on it, yes, you can come back as a potato, okay? There's nothing to deter you from doing that, all right? But that's not the idea. You know, it's kind of like if you're on a field trip with a teacher and you know, as you're riding along the bus and kids have questions, it's like, well, teacher, we're going to the zoo or we're going to go see the dinosaur bones or something. Isn't it going to be scary? Are we going to be scared, or are the dinosaurs going to eat us? You know, so again, you have these ideas of things, don't you? And the teacher says, no, we're just going to go see the bones. There aren't going to be any dinosaurs there to eat you. You'll be okay. All right. So it's kind of something like that. So, yeah, we've grown up with all these funny ideas, and that's exactly what they are. And again, people that cling to these ideas, instead of utilizing them for what they are, if they have value, yeah, utilize them. If they don't, forget it, you know. But again, it becomes a routine, a ritual. It becomes the authority, doesn't it? And that's where what I'm presenting, that's why I like it. It's a new presentation. We're no category. We're not authority. I'm pointing everyone, you might say. I'm referring. It's a reference, which I've said. Everything I do is a reference. It's not about me. I'm just managing it. That's the new man. I'm just managing. It's a reference to this reality you have to figure out. That becomes the great adventure, to do that and do something while you're here too. So, yes, whatever people decide, they have the right to decide that. So if you want to come back as a potato or a carrot, or if you believe that, and it's not even so that it will become so because you believe it, just like the little child in the bus saying, are we going to eat? Oh, I think we're going to be eaten by the dinosaurs if we go on this field trip. Well, see, it's not according to that. It's according to the field trip and what you're really going to do, you see. So it's about what life really is and not about what we think it is. So we're going through this process, but in a way, we hold ourselves back from a better understanding because we hold on to ideas that do not relate to what life is. So this is the part where, yes, you must figure out with the references that are provided and everything else in life, what life really is and not what you think it is and what others tell you and think it is, etc. This is your journey, but at the same time, this is why the boys stick together, because they reference each other too on this endless journey with the isness. And so that's what I'm referring to, more so than clinging to an idea that is supposedly an absolute, which there's no such thing in creation. Now, is there more to that question, Charles?
Yeah, Duane, this question, when I read this, it's very intriguing, you see, because when I see these other life forms, they are all pervaded by what you would call the life force. And we are also pervaded, we are also imbued with this life force. And I begin to ask myself, so what is the fate of this of this awareness that lives in plants, in animals, and other forms of life. We're talking about reaching, getting out of the matrix of creation and finding the new universes. So, what is the fate of this forms of life that exist at this level? Just, in fact, uh, is it that as they are serving a noble purpose for maybe supporting the ecosystem and supporting man, supporting life at this level? Is it that they are already operating at the highest level of awareness in that self-sacrifice, or what? What is their fate? What is the fate of these utuns? Uterns that we find in the various bodies, whether plant or animal or whatever. What is their fate? In fact, is something that puzzles me. Can you expatiate on that?
Well, that's a lot, Charles. You just wrote something we might call great literature. Okay, so and so it all sounds good, doesn't it, etc. My first book, the title of it, which is actually book two, and it got more refined and more refined, was The Return of the Real, the fate and destiny of real love. Okay, but that really refers, when you say fate, okay, and destiny and eternity and forever, infinity, and you have the eight as a symbol of infinity, etc. Well, that's self-encompassing, isn't it? That you're just talking about creation, is what you're talking about. And the thing is that we're all in the isness. Life is, and it's not inner, it's not outer, it's none of that. It is recognition, okay? And it is, how is it that you are going to recognize what you need to recognize to surpass creation? And so this is the point that we're at. So how can we say what it is? But simply, that's all it is. And all the pieces that I've created as references are to give you a hint at different viewpoints. In other words, for me, my experience for myself and how I decided to more recognize this is that I first used my imagination. That's what Paul gave to as an imagination technique. And we use our imagination in creation only because we don't need it in the real universes, because everything is complete. Why would you need to imagine something when everything already is? See, it doesn't apply. So what I did to set up my own reality with my intent and everything to apply it accordingly, and it wasn't to apply it to the imagination or the idea, but to give myself a hint as to something else, is that this is why I used the sun. It was like a big ball, like in the tiger's fang. Paul goes through these so-called different levels, which they're really not, but he needs to describe it to the personal self. And eventually he reaches this point where it's like a giant gulf out there he's looking at, maybe like a giant valley of clouds or something, like you're in the clouds, whatever it is, whatever the scene becomes according to what the isness decides this individual to see for that moment. And so he sees and he goes, well, all of a sudden I see the softest light. And there's just like this ball of light hanging in this like giant gulf. Okay, so what I did for myself was, seeing that, using that as a reference, like the sun, what I did is I saw myself, you might say, walking around this reality and imagining that I'm gaining a viewpoint every step that I take. I'm gaining a new viewpoint, in other words, I'm seeing the whole thing circling around this constantly, but I just used that as a setup to solidify my intent with this reality, okay? And then because of what you decide and choose, things become so according to life because everything equals itself. And so these are not scientific applications, but they're one that the personal self needs. It needs some kind of identity to relate to. Now, most people relate to, just like Paul said, they see God as an old man with a beard sitting on a throne. This is their view, you see? But it's not that. It's something that you cannot determine and decide. So he used the God idea. But the God idea is an authority. Now we're in a position where there is no authority. This is the best part. In other words, I like the idea of standing real. The old idea is co-worker with God. Well, that sounds like drudgery, doesn't it? How long do you want to be a co-worker with God? And you look at the co-workers with God on the earth, it's just more drudgery, isn't it? Yeah, it's like, gee, we're going to drudge here and we're going to do whatever and we got to battle the bad guys constantly. We're co-workers with God. Or is it standing real in a real position and viewing from that position, which you decide that position to recognize? So when you're going to school and you're wanting to become the doctor, you're aspiring to an idea that you have about how you're going to be the doctor. But at some point, as you continue on with the education that's set up to become the doctor, you're standing in the office, you have your uniform on, you are the doctor, you're in that position. But guess what? You've always been in that position. Now you recognize it. So this is how the isness of life is. It's so awesome and it's endless because we don't need restriction. And this is how the is sees us. But we need to learn how it sees, you see. And then we see from that viewpoint and not the personal viewpoint, but we have that as a comparison of what restriction is and then learning to see from the is of what restriction isn't, and that is where there are no restrictions and no authority. So all of a sudden you see, gosh, we don't need authorities. We don't need any of this at all. But again, as long as it's agreed to. But while we're here, we have the 5 bodies, we play the game. So does that kind of get close to something? But see, all you can do is hint at it. So that's what I've done for myself. And most people won't decide something like that. It's like, well, that's too far out, Duane. That's just, I can't really fathom that. I don't know what you're talking about, etc. Well, yeah. In other words, if a man decides to climb Mount Everest, you're not going to have the view until you get up there, but you got to go through hell and high water to get there, don't you? And guess what? You're going to pass graveyards on the way up because a lot of people died trying. Yeah. That's very real too, isn't it? And that's going to scare you. It's like, gee, I don't know if I want to go up there because am I going to die worse than these people died, once I make the top? Then once you make the top, then you got to figure out how to get down. That's the harder part. Climbing up isn't hard enough. Getting down is even harder in the physical sense. And so this is what we've been through, put ourselves through. But the reason we do this is that because within ourselves, the real you that the personal self is struggling to recognize, that's all the old saying is your higher self, okay? But again, it's always something beyond yourself. It's like, oh, your soul, or you have a soul, now you are soul. But that still doesn't get it, does it? But because I can recognize this reality, now it's available to everybody to recognize.
Yeah, Duane. What you say, we said is, in fact, only the new students can accommodate what you're saying, actually, really. Yeah.